Hello and welcome. This is Puneeth, Suraana, and you are listening to Galata. Vikas, welcome on the Galata podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you sound too fancy for a podcast already.
What do you mean?
Thank you.
और क्या बोले यार? No, but it's nice. We've been planning to do this for some time and now it's finally happened.
Yeah. My usual first question has always been, what were the conversations around the dinner table when you're growing up in Calcutta?
They were varied. They were very typical, conversations that I guess that happens in most middle class households. My parents, my father and my uncle, they have a joint business, so they would come back pretty late-ish, around 8, 9-ish, and we would have already had dinners by then. Most of the conversations were mostly around what's happening, how's school going, how are friends doing, are you having fun? But those were the conversations mostly with my father. With my mother, I guess conversations were happening throughout the day at different points in time for different things, whether it was to, study or like grades or to ask for extra permission to go play cricket or any of that.
Interesting. What was it like growing up in Calcutta?
It was fun, I guess. It was, I grew up in a joint family. I had 2 elder brothers who annoyed the shit out of me as I was a kid, when I was a kid.
You got bullied.
So for me, I guess I was their entertainment. It's not like there were mobile phones or, things going on TV all the time. I was the entertainment for them. But, in hindsight, I can say that I'm glad I had that, upbringing and exposure, because as annoying as it was when I was a kid, as we grew up, that bond is strong and has gotten stronger, and, in large part, I feel like it shaped me into the person that I have become, right? All of that.
So did you get to spend time in your family business, the one that your uncle and dad run?
Much later.
What was the business?
They have a business. They are traders of copper wires, copper strips, copper plates, basically non-ferrous metals and alloys. And they are just, they're wholesale traders. So I did get a chance to experience the business. But that was much later on. Like as kids in school, we would just go there for like fun or like for during Diwali Puja and all of that. That was exciting. But my parents never really, our business was small, and it wasn't like it was cool or sexy or any of it. It just about made ends meet. And there was nothing glamorous about business. So we were all encouraged to kind of study and make our own careers and all of that. Yeah.
That's unusual, yeah?
No, I don't think that's unusual. I think that's true for a lot of business families, because most business families or most businesses aren't of the scale that we kind of talk about very freely here in Bangalore, right? They kind of, especially like a lot of Marwari Gujarati businesses, and most of them are inclined towards business or like have been doing it for some time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all big. So I think it was natural for them. They didn't want to kind of us to go through the struggle that they have experienced in their lives, which is why they wanted it differently.
Yeah, I see that trend very vividly of I think the second and third generation not taking the business, instead taking a job, and they're like, Saturday, Sunday to free hai. You are at least able to spend time with family.
Sure, there are pros and cons of business. I have friends who have taken over their businesses in Calcutta. They always, at different stages of their education, knew that they would be going for that. Some decided it much later on after doing an MBA. But I think, for like specifically for me and my brothers and in general the family, attitude was never that इनको business में जाना है. It was mostly like, okay,
पढ़ाई करो,
पढ़ाई करो, like, you know, business has kind of like, business is there, but it's not something that is big or like, you know, that you should be doing. Like, you're much better off if you study and kind of like figure out your own career.
You know, it's only yesterday when I was researching, completing the research of G.D. Birla's episode 91, I got to know that the starting part of 19th century, Calcutta was the financial capital.
Yeah.
It wasn't Bombay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Till I think early 20th century and just till before independence, I think Calcutta was the hub. It was, it was the British capital for like almost more than 200 years. So a lot of trading and business activities and all of that originated from Calcutta.
Yeah, it just like, what? Blew me away.
Yeah, it feels like a distant cry now, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. It's very interesting how quickly the financial capitals can change. Your interest for finance is something that you talk about everywhere. And did it start off in the dukan? Did it grow over time?
No, not really. I think whatever exposure I had very limited exposure at the dukan.
Really? What did you do? How did you spend your time there?
I didn't spend my time at the dukan. I spent my time mostly at school and at home and like doing what most kids do, and that was not in the dukan. But of course, how parents manage money, how they think about it, obviously all of that had an influence. But that wasn't the thing that excited me. I think that the stuff that excited me to get into finance was just economics actually to begin with. Was first, a lot of that made sense. It explained, it felt like it was explaining things that were happening around me anyways that I kind of knew, and this subject kind of put a theory to it. So, as even without knowing the concepts of demand and supply, most of us experience it in some way or the other before we reach class 10 or 11 when we actually study, or when we can study economics. And economics kind of like conceptualized or put it in theory a bunch of things that I could experience otherwise happening around me all the time. Things like demand supply, diminishing marginal utility, all of it. And then that kind of moved towards finance, and the appeal was the fact that people who got into investment banking not only had great opportunities from like the kind of work, from the perspective of the work that they were doing, but it was also very high paying jobs, and that was an appeal, and
had the glamour. Still
that pushed me in that direction. And then I kind of ended up exploring many different parts of the world of finance, which in over time kind of compounded my interest in that space.
Tell me more.
I got different opportunities. I worked at Goldman Sachs, then I went to D. Shaw & Co. At Goldman Sachs, I was doing operations, not really investment banking as the company is known for, but it did give me like, an idea of how that backend works, how many, different nodes are there for a company like Goldman Sachs globally. At D. Shaw, I got exposure towards equity research, doing kind of due diligence on all kinds of deals. Also kind of, doing not so fun work in terms of data cleaning and all of it. But then you realize the importance of data. And this is all like back in 2011, 12, so a long time ago. I did my CFA in hopes to get, better and better opportunities in the world of finance. Went to do a master's ultimately because, decided that, or rather figured out that at that point in time in India, if you wanted proper front office exposure or be involved in deals, which were not that common anyways to begin with in India. The most common paths were either get through one of the IIMs and then get a job, or you kind of go abroad. Yeah. And I didn't want to take the CAT exam. So I kind of decided to go do a master's and then kind of hopefully build a career there. So I went to do my master's.
This is in London, right?
This was at Oxford.
Oxford, London.
In economics and finance, and then I worked in London for 2.5 years in the finance space again.
Who do you look up to in the finance world before we move to the next phase?
I look up to, honestly, I look up to Warren Buffett as, how do I say, what's the word for it? As commonplace as it sounds, but I respect and really admire him, not for the skills that he has. He has amazing skills, which obviously is not something that most people can replicate. But I respect him for the advice he gives to people. Like his standard advice even today for everyone is to invest in index funds, to not go chasing after very all kinds of strategies, whether it's derivatives based or just equity based, but to simply kind of minimize your fees and invest in index funds, and that kind of takes care of it in the long run. And I love that, him saying that, him writing in his shareholders letter that after his death 90% of his wife's assets he's instructed that to be put in index funds. And we need more people like that. Is great advice, so I respect him for obviously his financial wizardry, which I mean everyone knows about, but more so for how he thinks about all of this from someone else's perspectives, the advice he kind of gives out. I think that is very, very nice of him and very valuable to us as individuals.
Yeah, there's 60 years of Berkshire's annual letters available online.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And there's so much entertainment and humor in them.
Yeah.
In addition to Warren Buffett, anybody else that you look up
from
to?
The financial
in
world in India? I mean, I look up not necessarily from the. I mean, Nitin Kamath is from the financial world. He runs a brokerage, Zerodha, right? But it's not like he's a great business person, a great founder, and all of that. But not really known. He's not like a finance person in that sense. Although he is, his knowledge is immense. But he's known more for.
Not the investing side, but
for building Zerodha and
business,
the brokerage business, and I admire him as to not only, I mean, in terms of how he's built it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and they're still so humble and approachable and accessible.
He is.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's great of him. Yeah. And how he's built it also, I really respect that. We kind of wish to emulate parts of it.
What parts?
For example, how firstly, how transparent and honest they are with their customers and users. Their intent is always on the right side of the user in terms of the things that they do. In terms of this, just the culture he's built internally at the company, from my days at Small Case, I've known a bunch of Zerodha folks, and it's amazing that there's just so much loyalty, so much joy to be there in employees who've been there for for a long time. It's not like these are new people who've just joined one of the biggest brokerages in India. No, these are people who've been there for 10 years and are still very happy to be there. And if they want to go out, they can probably earn 3-4 times more, but they don't. And that's amazing if you can build that as a founder, to have that kind of people around you who believe in the story the same way as much as you do.
You left Small Case at the cusp of its crazy growth.
Right.
Why?
Well, I mean,
yeah, this was somewhere around that 2 lakh, 3 lakh user base that just zoomed up.
I mean, COVID happened, so everything zoomed up, including Small Case's user trajectory. But, I mean, it wasn't planned that I want to leave just when this is happening. It was planned much before that, my departure.
Why?
I was moving mainly because I wanted to explore a few things on my own, and B, in terms of just how things were shaping up there, and all the different things that I could contribute, I felt like it wasn't happening the way I thought it would, and felt more of I had less to offer and have an impact on their growth at that point in time.
So when you stepped out, you mentioned about the entire phase of you being jobless.
Right.
Yeah. What all did you explore, or did you get to explore, or did you just stumble upon different things? Did you tinker around? Don't tell me you had a mental model.
No, I had no model when I quit small case. The good thing that happened, I mean, was that around the time I had decided to, after I had decided to leave small case, that's when around that time, like COVID was starting to become bigger and bigger, but still not like, this is like March 2020, early March. So panic was not in yet, lockdown was not in yet, but at that point in time I did decide to short the market, and that turned out to be a great trade. So
Tell me more.
I mean, we decided to short the market. There's not, so we shorted Nifty, and shorting is one aspect of it, but then we held through it for like a good 20-25 days. So the whole downfall from Nifty at 11,000 to probably like 8,500 is something that was obviously a huge shock, but fortunately for us was something that we kind of also made money on. So by the time I quit small case, that had already yielded returns, and I was figuring out what to do next.
So you had a kitty in place.
I had a kitty in
Yeah.
place. I would have had a kitty in place even if this wasn't there, because that, this kind of was like a bonus, right? Like I had taken the decision to quit small case before that had happened.
How much did you make in this shop?
90x, I want to say.
Give me the amount.
I can't give an amount.
The tax.
But 90x in 20-24 days is a great
I just
outcome.
want to understand the amount, not from a gossip point of view, but point of view of what kind of a buffer you had for yourself before you went
No, I get that,
vagabonding
right?
for a
Which
bit.
is why this makes it kind of irrelevant, because I had taken that decision before this.
So how much was before that when you had?
I had
like,
savings. I had enough savings to kind of get by for like a year at least with that lifestyle that I had at that point in time. So I had that.
which is what, like 10-20 lakhs, 50-60 lakhs, 1 crore.
No, not that much. It would have been in like, lakhs. What is it? How many digits is it?
You're the finance guy between
seven,
us.
7 digits, somewhere in 7-digit lakhs. I don't want to say the exact amount. See, the thing is, it's that knowing that doesn't really help, right? Because people can have all kinds of reserves and still not be able to take that plunge.
I agree.
And people can have no reserves and still be able to take a plunge. And this is something that, I don't think gets talked about that much. In that sense, I'm very lucky. I'm the youngest in my generation. And while, as I was saying earlier, it came with its own problems of being bullied and having 2 elder brothers. After I grew up, like when I wanted to quit Goldman Sachs, I quit Goldman Sachs, and they simply asked me like, what, are you not learning anymore? And I was like, no, I'm not learning anymore. And they were like, okay, then come back. And I could come back. I had that freedom and luxury to come back home without another job in hand, without my parents kind of breathing on my neck and ridiculing me for like quitting a job and all of it. And that really helped, and that kind of stayed with me as I grew in my career, right? Like when I quit Deisha also, it was the same. I kind of moved back home, focused on my masters and application, and kind of did that. And even when I was quitting small case, like, by that time I knew my parents would be supportive. But having, that knowledge, having that comfort of having 2 elder brothers in steady jobs who act as buffer if something goes wrong, that has so much value, right? Which I can say that today, that, if my life was different, if I didn't have that backing, I don't know the kind of decisions I would have been able to take, right? But so not everyone is lucky like that. I have been, and obviously my personality type and my nature also has enabled me to take these risks. But then if I didn't have this ability to take risks, it would have been very different, I would imagine.
So I understand you're a risk taker. But and you're telling me that it's not being talked much about of the safety buffer before you jump off and start a venture. So how had you planned out before, let's say, this 90x whatever happened? What was your 1 year saving is what you had thought of, or was there
Yeah.
more to it that you had thought?
No, I thought of that, I can get by for like a year. Let me figure out what are the things that I want to do and explore that.
What changed after it became like 100x? How
I
did
could
you
give
approach?
myself more time.
Okay.
So that 1 year ended up being 2.5 years before I ultimately started Shoffr.
How did you spend those 2.5 years?
Well,
It's interesting. You didn't go bonkers spending the money and like just
I mean, it's
you didn't
not-
get spoiled.
No, I'm sure I spoiled myself in some aspects or the other because it was windfall.
What did you spoil yourself?
I don't remember. Maybe I would have bought a new phone or something at best.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not to say I didn't spend any of it. I did, but it's capital at the end of the day. Like I look at money as capital, savings as capital, right? So there's always an opportunity cost as to like what you're doing with money. So that's what it allowed me to do. It allowed me to kind of increase my buffer and figure things out and give myself more time to understand the next steps that I do want to take. And I did explore, like I was working on a fintech idea that didn't pan out. I mean, I still believe in that idea, but like it ultimately didn't pan out because the guy I was kind of planning that with, they had scenes going on at home during the second wave, so he had to kind of like back out of that. And I tried to do it on my own, but I couldn't make it happen. Then I was looking at other things that I could be doing, exploring job options, and then at some point Shoffr just kind of happened.
So you attempted a fintech startup, and the next thing that you did was Shoffr? I'm just curious how you were able to.
No, the next thing I did was explore a few
Vagabond.
job options, or to see whether or not I could work at a few places. And then as I was exploring that, the idea of Shoffr started happening.
What was the insight for Shoffr?
The insight was very simple. The insight was that electric cars now exist and they offer much cheaper running cost, but that said, they come with a higher initial cost of purchase. So the insight was that this should make sense from a commercial perspective, because the more you run the car, the better it is in terms of the cost savings and the amount of money you can make.
I agree. But the time that you started Shoffr, probably around a little before that, electric bikes were the trend.
Okay.
Right? Because I interviewed a few founders who were like
Right.
big into it. So I'm wondering, why choose electric cars? You could have chosen electric, maybe logistical vehicles, much bigger. Why choose the most?
I mean, so I looked at the entire EV ecosystem, right? From 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, charging business, battery recycling, all kinds of things that were happening in the EV space or EV ecosystem at that point in time. And this is July 2022. Because I wasn't from the sector. For me, this was like a purely, something which was making financial sense. So then it was like, acha, I am not really like saying कि मेरे को EVs में कुछ करना है, right? I am agnostic to what I am doing in EVs. So then I looked through the whole thing, and to me, from a financial perspective, it made sense to actually do it with that form factor, which was 4-wheelers, and that too with like a specific car model.
What was the close second?
In terms of?
When you looked at the entire.
No, there was no close second.
Oh yeah.
Nothing seemed to make financial sense. They all had a future, but not a future in the near future.
Okay. Okay.
So.
Yeah. Go on.
So yeah, I mean, that was it. Like I looked at all of it, like charging business or 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers.
How did you approach the research of it, Vikas?
It's like research 101, which is like, you spend a lot of time Googling, reading articles, going down different kinds of rabbit holes, whether it's battery tech, whether what else is happening in the world. speaking to a lot of people in the industry, people who've either been associated or continue working in those spaces and domains, and kind of like, bouncing off what one person says with another and kind of connecting the dots.
And how did the conviction build that there is a gap that is viable?
The conviction got built in this process of research and talking to different people, right? Because you're trying to kind of disprove your thesis, or at least like how it happened for me was I had the thesis like kind of ready very quickly. I spent about 2.5, 3 months trying to.
What was the thesis?
The thesis was that this business, if done with electric car of a particular kind and operating on a certain route, is going to make money, should be making money. And at that point in time, obviously Ola, Uber and the likes had their own issues in terms of quality and all of it. But the thesis was that. And then spent a lot more time kind of trying to disprove that.
Disprove that?
Disprove that, or to see where it can go wrong.
Why?
Well,
it's a classic invert, but why?
Because that's how you build conviction. Like you have to, not only know what you think you're right about, but you have to be aware of all the kind of angles where it could be going wrong, or try to answer why that won't go wrong in your case. Or so if you understand, okay, these are 10 things that come with, let's say, entering a taxi business. How will you do this differently? How will you do this differently? Will this be something that you can manage or not? Is this EV going to perform the way you expect it to be? Why will it? Why won't it? So you have to kind of explore and answer all these questions, and that's how at least I build conviction. And in that process, you kind of eliminate things that are not applicable, which then kind of hopefully increase your conviction levels. You'll never be 100% convinced of anything, because it will have to do with the future. But then the more you can eliminate things that otherwise would be classified as doubts, the more you can kind of build your conviction.
So you had like a 60-70% conviction ke ho sakta hai. There's a possibility.
I want to say more than that.
More than that? Oh, nice.
Yeah. See, ho sakta hai to is a given, right? Like there are enough people out there today who run like a 20 cab business, 30 cab business.
The drivers,
and that is essentially what I had to get comfortable with. I was like, you know what? अगर वो 20 गाड़ी का बिजनेस चला सकता तो मैं भी चला सकता हूँ. ऐसा नहीं है. I don't know how big it will be. I don't know whether all these things will play out the way I want to. But at the very least, I should be able to run a 20-car business, because there are so many people doing it, and at least I have better exposure, better education. I've been fortunate enough
you have
with
an edge.
that. I should have an edge.
So your only edge was the fact that it's electric and the cost of running it is ridiculously low, and there was no other edge that you.
I mean, now I can say there are many edges,
Hindsight.
but like at that point, I wouldn't classify this as an edge.
Oh yeah.
At that point in time, you can't classify that as an edge. You have to make that happen, and only then it becomes an edge. Today I can say brand is an edge, but like 3 years back also it was called Shoffr, but I couldn't tell that, oh, this is an edge.
Ban gaya, now it's an edge.
You have to make those things an edge, right? Like ban gaya, it didn't happen magically. It was very deliberate. It was well thought of. It was a lot of effort and thoughts were gone into, acha, logo kaise banna chahiye, acha, black gaadi hi lo, and like market it like that, or don't market it like, be kind of like, don't spam your users, or things which are not conventional. Today they can be classified as an edge, but at that point in time, your thinking might be the same, but you can't classify that as an edge.
Nice. I agree. How did you find your co-founder?
I've known him for like 14 years now.
Okay.
He used to work at the Shore. We were friends. We hadn't worked together, but we were part of like a common group, and we would hang out a lot. I've known him for like a long time.
And how were you able to convince? How were you able to come on the same?
Yeah, it took some time and effort. He's an engineer. He had a much higher paying job at that point in time. But that also built over time. He was sounding board when I was kind of exploring this idea, and then increasingly he, you know, volunteered to kind of like help out with tech while still working at his job. And then as this got launched and we kind of got the traction we did, at some point I kind of, you know, the workload became a lot. I was the only person handling all of it. And then I kind of convinced him to kind of move shit full time.
Interesting. This is all still while Shoffr was operating on your dining table at your house.
Shoffr operated from the dining table of my house for like the first 2 years of its existence.
How did you approach hiring, Vikas? Because you've got some really interesting, talented folks here who are able to individually handle a lot of these categories.
Of course.
Yeah. How do you approach hiring?
Through usual means, like, you know, one of our guys came via LinkedIn post. One person we interviewed, he actually couldn't join Shoffr at that point in time, but then he referred someone else, and you know, I think that was the person that you met and spoke to the other day.
I met and spoke a lot of people, by the way.
Right.
Not
okay.
here, but yeah.
So we've come. It's all through standard, usual channels, like either LinkedIn
I understand
or through
the channels,
referrals
but then how do you filter them beyond once they are in front of you on the call? What do you look for?
I look for primarily how much they have done their research in terms of what Shoffr as a company does, and then where they think they can contribute. So having clarity on both is something that, you know, I kind of look for and then kind of build on top of. So for example, you know, you as an individual will know what your strengths are, right? What you're good at, what you're not good at. Now you will know that better than I will get to, you know that in like a half an hour call or a meeting with you. Which is why it's kind of important that you kind of research in and out about Shoffr and see where you can contribute. So I look for that, and I look for like, I think about this a lot, but I don't know, I want to test for sincerity or like passion. So the only way that I think that happens, or like, you know, one of the ways that I think we kind of try to do that with is kind of look at other things that they are passionate about and kind of talk about that, right? That gives you a sense of how deep they go into things, how they perceive something that they like.
Give me an example of any hire. You don't need to mention the name if you don't want to, but
so
ideally would be the first half dozen members. Somebody.
No, of course, right? Like, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. I don't have good tests on this front. Like, you know, for example, one of the persons we initially hired for, and I think this maybe is probably like the best example at like an early stage startup, which is what we were probably like, you know, for the past 1 year. Some transition has happened in this past 1 year, but like a year back, we were still like 5-6 people. Right, and that from there to today, that's where the transition happened. But like one of the guys we initially hired for a corporate role, which is basically managing corporate partnerships, he was hired for that. But then as the need of the business changed, he kind of like not only was doing that, but started taking on other things. And today, like, you know, he's kind of like the head of operations, which is nothing related to what he was hired for. Yeah. But that was the need of the company at that point in time.
And this was the person that was referred by somebody you met at a networking event?
No, this was someone who came via LinkedIn.
Oh,
right.
So they grew with the organization.
Yeah, and that's true for like a lot of people here, at least the first half dozen hires that you talk about, right? Because the role might be defined, but then we might need you to do more than that.
That's true with every startup.
It's true, like, you know, and I think that is great exposure. Like, I got that at small case. I may have been hired for like one particular business growth role, but then I was involved in so many other aspects, from product and design to marketing to kind of like, you know, content, all of these things. And that exposure kind of, I think, is really valuable.
100%. I think that's one benefit a startup provides to anybody
Yeah.
who is willing to take that jump.
Early stage startup. I think that starts changing as
What
the
about
startup
the hiring
goes
of this
from like.
person?
Sorry.
What about the hiring with respect to this person? You were saying that this person, the way you hired him,
Yeah, I mean, like we were trying to gauge, right? Like what are the things that he was passionate about, and it felt like because of his experience, he really liked working on the ground, right? Which at that point we thought like, okay, maybe like because our need was more corporate, we kind of fit him there, but even like based on what he had said, it kind of in hindsight is very evident he would have been great at ops. But because he was passionate about that stuff.
interesting. So you're figuring out sincerity tests. Nice.
No,
I
I'm
like
looking
it.
for better and better ways to do
ways to
that.
test,
This is
yeah.
just something that has
Or
helped
at least
us
a hint
before.
of it. Maybe they're passionate about
Yeah.
a sport for the long time, or taken up an extracurricular activity.
Sincerity is not necessarily the right word,
Accomplishment,
but more
yeah.
like in terms of like a self starter sort of a thing, or having that quality.
Oh, okay. You're done with the
I don't
answer.
have much more to say. I'm waiting for you next.
Interesting. Okay, so hiring has been interesting so far. I like it.
Hiring
Maybe I'll get back.
is challenging.
Do you
Just on
still
that
do you
note.
still do interviews?
Of
Do you
course.
still sit in on them?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I still try my best to interview new drivers as well, although it's not as possible. But definitely anyone working here or in the ops team and
Tell
all
me
of
more
it.
about drivers. How do you interview them? How do you
It's a
filter
vibe
them?
check. Like you have to understand whether or not this person is someone you would want to put in front of a guest. So depends on everything: how they talk, how they behave, how polite/aggressive they are, how they have groomed themselves.
How do you gauge these? How polite?
It's
how
a vibe
aggressive?
check, as I said, and your parameters and gut feel there will be different, let's say, than from mine and someone else's. So, but it is literally like legit a vibe check. in
Like
terms
how
of
do you do it? Like,
speak
do
to
they come
them,
down to
make
the office?
conversation,
Oh yeah.
not like ask.
But you don't know Kannada, do you?
No, but
you
like
don't know Kannada,
that's
okay.
fine. That's
Oh.
when I say it's fine. Obviously, it's much better if I can speak their native tongue. Not necessarily all drivers are from Karnataka. Like some are from
I'm sure. So
Kerala,
how do you,
some are
yeah.
from.
But they're all English speaking.
They're not
Mostly,
all,
no?
and it's
Okay.
fine. Like you can communicate in if they know either. Like I know Hindi, English primarily, right? So if they know that, then sure that becomes smooth. If they don't know that, I kind of make another person sit with me and kind of get it translated, and that back and forth happens. It's obviously not as smooth, but it's still better than not happening that.
And how do you gauge the vibe then? Because the
As
languages
I
are
said,
so
like
different.
from how they
And,
speak to the expressions they make to the body language to
And how long do they
just how they talk about
last?
family, just all these things.
So a family person is much more.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying how they talk about these things, right? Is there respect? Is there frustration? Is
Give me an
there...
example of interview with a driver that you rejected.
We rejected many.
Yeah.
Like there was a driver who was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this, and like when I asked him why, he's like, nahi aise hi hai. Or like it was something where it was like it kind of like was a conversation end as opposed to like him answering in a way where the discussion could continue. So that is something that I would not want, because when you're driving, you face all kinds of guests.
Sure.
Guests who are nice, guests who are not so nice, guests who are adamant, guests who are not adamant. And when everything's good, it's fine, but then how do you handle difficult and tricky situations? And there there needs to be an element of understanding that you are ultimately in the hospitality business. And if you don't get that, if your ego and your attitude kind of takes over then that's not something that I would want in a person who's driving Shoffr car, right? It's fine. Like I'm not saying that's a bad thing to have, but in this context,
So they're
for
not
the
joining
needs
like
that
a-
I have
A
from a
cab
driver.
company, they're joining a hospitality business.
Yes.
It's a very different lens.
Of course, sure.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me that your fleet team is much larger than the team that sits here
Of course.
at the office. Yeah, we're talking
Yeah,
easily
any
200
day.
to 300 drivers on and off. You looked at many car companies and you nailed down at BYD. How many cars did you buy initially? I'm curious. Two?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more. That initial, that 0 to 2 or 0 to maybe 10 car journey.
That took a long time. 0 to 10 took a long time. We bought 2 knowing that we'll be buying another 2 next month.
What? Next month? Okay.
Like, it was like 2 se to nahi hoga. So it was like, okay, whatever it is that you're planning, you plan for at least 4 to start with. So
And this is all your own
first
funds.
we bought 2 cars and we kind of didn't announce. We kind of like was just piloting. And
How did you pilot?
how did we pilot? We told friends and family that we are doing this, existing network, colleagues. So whoever wanted to kind of like, take a ride would reach out and like we would book it like that.
And it was
And
free
we
for
didn't
them?
want to announce it mainly because with 2 cars, what is there to announce?
It was free for them while they are piloting?
It wasn't free, it was paid service.
Okay.
It was never free.
Okay.
And then with 4 cars, we announced, I put out a LinkedIn post which got some traction, and that is legit how we announced Shoffr now exists.
Pause. Can we go back to the 2 and 4 car? What are the pilots like? But they could go anywhere or just
Airport, it was just
Oh, it was still
airport
limited to
transfers.
airport. Okay.
It was just
Where did you
airport
discover the
transfers.
insight that airport is the most profitable route?
By speaking to drivers. Like I
Really?
used to go to the airport a lot because of my work and all of that previously. And this is like, I've always been this person. I speak to auto guys, I speak to drivers, I understand
chatty customer.
what their lives are. Depends on like, obviously the person, but then in general it's true to say that I will talk about all kinds of things with them. And almost all drivers know that Bangalore airport is one of the most profitable routes. And that wasn't like an insight that I discovered on my own. That was something which was true and verified by so many people, so many drivers, folks working at ride aggregators, all of that. We knew that.
So it was just 2 to 4 cars going to and back to airport.
Yes.
Yeah. What changed in the pilot? What all assumptions that you had gone in? What changed?
Nothing changed. It just made me realize that operations is the key of this business.
Yeah.
So I was fully in operations.
It's a hospitality
But everything
business,
else kind of worked as we thought it would. They appreciated the cars much more, they liked the service. Most of the things in terms of like how we thought, if we do this should happen, they actually happened.
What didn't happen? Give an example.
What didn't happen? Obviously a lot of things didn't go as per plan to the
I know.
dot. But
You're not the Oracle of Calcutta. So I know.
No, a lot of things that I think in that pilot we realized were like operationally ye hoye gaye, because this is like a people's business.
It'll become more efficient.
So there will be drivers who kind of don't talk as nicely all the time, or there might be instances where drivers even though they're just like on like a night shift and they should have rested during the day, they didn't, and they might be found sleeping and not answering calls when the guest is calling. So a lot of operational challenges kind of came up in that pilot or in those initial months, which given I didn't have that exposure and experience before, it was very helpful for me to kind of understand the dynamics and the operations / humans heavy nature of this business.
Yeah. It's a very humans heavy business, yeah. Did you start off from the BYD cars and then kept adding on?
Yes.
Yeah. And is the entire fleet still just the same model?
It's
of the
BYD. They've come up, like, they phased out the old model which we started with, which was E6, and they've introduced a new version of that model, which is E7. But yes, by and large, the same model.
Interesting. This just, when I was just thinking about you and Shoffr, I was thinking, this is such a similar example to like the Southwest Airlines, where they had just one aircraft throughout their fleet.
Yeah.
And that made their operations so much more simpler.
Yeah.
All the mechanics knew how to operate, the tools were the same, the procedures were the same.
Yeah.
The back end was very simple and clear.
Yeah.
Have you seen those efficiencies also, having the same model across?
I mean, seen ka baat nahi hai na, because I have nothing to compare it with, but I do know that it helps.
Yeah. Tell me more.
To claim this is efficient, I need to have comparables, right? But because I don't have any other car in my fleet,
But I remember
I
one of your
can't.
drivers telling
I
me-
don't know what the complexities
I
are.
agree. I remember one of your drivers telling me that there was some problem with one car, so they were able to figure out parts from another car
Absolutely.
immediately, and they were back on the.
Yeah, these things are possible.
Yeah.
I mean, like closer home, it's Indigo, which is like the similar model.
100%. Yeah.
So it helps. It helps in many ways. Like all these things, plus you kind of build a better relationship with one supplier. So that also kind of compounds over time as you grow.
Did you start very intentionally building a relationship with BYD as a supplier? Because I love how so many trends have come together in the journey of Shoffr, right? It's not just the fact that it's a EV cab hailing service. It's also the uptrend of BYD in India that's happening. That
Yeah.
Shoffr is so well positioned to, I don't know, I know friends who wanted to feel how BYD feels, so they didn't take a test drive with the car, but they went in a Shoffr beforehand. So I'm just curious. That was a very interesting trend that you timed right.
I mean, we weren't looking to time
I
the
know.
trend. We were looking to buy the best asset.
Most efficient car.
Or rather, what we thought was the best asset. But then over time, as I said, right, because we were betting on them, they also obviously took notice of us, and that relationship kind of started growing. I think in some ways it's fair to say that we made BYD popular in India, because a lot of people didn't know
Their
of
first
them,
exposure
but then
was-
their first exposure to a BYD was in a Shoffr.
Shoffr car, yeah. Interesting. How did you protect the downside, Vikas? You bought 2 cars, next month you bought 2 more, and then slowly you got to 10. How did you protect the downside in case this didn't work?
What downside? Like, there are many downsides.
Yeah, like if there weren't enough takers, the cars would have gone waste, your assets, and you still have EMIs to pay for these 35 lakh rupee cars.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out to protect the downside?
We didn't. I mean, we thought I mean, when I say we didn't, the downsides are either let's say a situation like COVID happened, which we were asked a lot in 2022 because it was still 2022.
That's
What will
one.
happen if COVID happens?
But
And there's
let's
no
say-
right answer there, because I can't do
No,
anything
there
if
could be so
COVID
many
happens.
downsides. Like, let's say customers don't want to pay the 10-20% premium on the cabs.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Or-
and that's what
So
you
I'm
kind of
wondering-
doing that due diligence, building that conviction, kind of gives you the initial confidence, and then you have to kind of follow through
So
with
you didn't
that
have a backup
experience. No, the
Did you?
backup plan again was coming back to can I not make a 20-car business work? There are thousands of people who are doing that with Innovas and all of that already, right? So why shouldn't I be able to crack that, instead of spending time on thinking what will happen if these 5 things don't happen, which I am hoping to happen, right?
So you already had so many 20-car businesses going on.
Yeah,
there
they
was a
were
problem,
going
yeah,
on, and
yeah. Makes sense.
these were not glamorous businesses, big businesses. They didn't have a brand, but then they were making money and they were doing all right. So the question was more of why will we not be able to do that, right? And because
There's so many other downsides I can think of. Like, a driver could take the car and conk off. Who cares, right? Which I have known in my circle has happened with fleet
Sure.
owners. So I'm just wondering, did you think of some downsides and figure out a way?
See, there are downsides that you can plan
Yeah.
and kind of minimize that they don't happen, and then there are downsides that you can't plan. For example, it's possible that a Shoffr car, like a fourth car or whatever that we've just bought, like for whatever reason it's going through to the airport, it's passing through a bridge, or there's a bridge overhead and something falls off and it damages the car. You can't plan for that, right? What you can hope is, okay, fine, you have insurance, you're covered. There will still be a opportunity cost loss because there is that car is now not making money, but that's not something that I will think about, right? Like it's such a low probability event that it makes
a bridge
little
falling
sense.
is not a low probability event anymore in Bangalore.
It makes little sense for you to kind of plan
Yeah,
for like
yeah.
what will you do when that happens.
Yeah.
So
So in addition to the car, I was just wondering, did you have to put some safety mechanisms in?
Yeah, of
tracking? What was that process like?
that process was initially, it was more of like finding the right vendors, speaking to the people, finding which one is like the best quality and at what cost. Is that cost something that you can absorb, and then making it happen.
Like a GPS tracker?
Yeah,
In
like a
addition to
telematics
everything
device, SOS devices. These things are all there in all the cars. We
How robust is the charging network? Is it reliable? Because I know your cars go to Nandi Hills, they go to Tirupati and everything. Is it really reliable? Is electric
absolutely it
electric
is,
mobility, long route electric mobility is practical in India?
It is. I mean, we have obviously explored many different routes,
How
but
far?
so have others.
Can you do it like 1,000, 2,000 kilometers?
Depends on where, right?
Oh,
Depends
yeah?
on the route, because you can kind of, before you embark upon that trip, you can see which charging stations are there en route. So I know of people who've done more than 2,000 kilometer trips as well, in their EVs. But yeah, the infrastructure is there, and
More
it's
than
only
2,000
improved a
kilometers with
lot.
Shoffr?
It's only improved a lot in the last 3 years since we started. So the trend is much.
I love the trend, yeah. You've look, that's very well established because
Yeah.
you've gotten into the right trend.
Yeah, no, that trend is there for
trend
sure.
is there for sure. Yeah.
That trend is there, and like compared to when we started, even then the infrastructure and charging the cars weren't an issue. If they were an issue, we wouldn't have been able to kind of successfully build our business.
Yeah, but you also have a higher capacity car, right?
Of course.
So the dynamics change versus like a
Absolutely.
lower end EV.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
So it is
those are conscious choices that we made.
It's very interesting that electric vehicle mobility on a longer scale has become like a longer route has become practical and even commercially viable.
Yes.
At what point do you see the tipping scale moving where an Aam Admi decides to not go to a CNG hybrid petrol car and takes an electric car for his travel company? Are we there at that tipping point?
For their travel company or for their personal usage?
No, not for the travel company.
I think
The
that
average cab driver decides to take the plunge.
probably a few more years. Basically,
Really?
the right car with the right, or at least a minimum threshold of range. So basically, a certain amount of battery pack, like a certain size of battery pack, that needs to become available at a price point which today isn't happening.
Really?
Yeah, in my opinion. But even that will take some education and understanding the pros and cons.
You still feel it's a few years away where the average cab driver would opt
Yes.
for an EV?
I mean, it's not my view. I'm telling you basis on whatever I have heard from
Of course. That's why we
drivers
make
who
views.
are buying new cars or considering buying new cars, and they aren't thinking EV today. Most of them are
Surprising.
convinced not to buy an EV.
They're convinced not to buy an EV.
Yeah, and they have good reasons for it.
Tell me more.
I mean, they are commercial drivers, right? So they are operating 16 hours a day or anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day. The car needs to run a certain kilometer and be able to do that without having the need to charge. more importantly, it needs to, they have all these kinds of risks. Like the other day, I was speaking to someone who had bought an EV, and then once, I think they had to go some 400 kilometers outside Bangalore, and they couldn't find the charging station, and then the car had to be towed back, and then once it came back, the third day that person just sold off the car and was like, this, I can't be like thinking कि ये गाड़ी इधर जा सकता है, नहीं जा सकता है, क्या कर सकता है. So most of them are better off, or they feel that they are better off with buying a CNG or petrol diesel, which is a lot more freely available and comes with much less restrictions, so as to say.
Or headache. But it's very clear that EV is not really the obvious choice for the average cab driver. They're still looking at a hybrid or probably a CNG.
Yes,
yeah.
I would say that's the case today.
Yeah. So you still have a sufficient time where the moat is still there for the EV cab business?
I mean, look, though I don't see it as like that. I think it's the cab business. EV is what is powering our cab business. But most people don't care, even guests and customers don't necessarily care whether it's an EV or not, right? They are mostly more after a great service or a hassle-free experience, and that you can provide irrespective of whether you're running EVs or not.
Where do you see, if you had to not choose the next 50 cars as BYD, what would you pick?
I don't know. None of the
Take a
cars
wild
that
guess.
are available right now.
None of the cars are?
That are available right
In
now
India?
in India.
Okay, but internationally?
I don't know. I don't have the knowledge of what's available internationally. Like there are some cars that we are yet to explore. For example, VinFast is something that we are yet to explore. Tesla was on the list, but then they are priced at a level in India which doesn't make economic sense.
So much twice the...
Right. And it doesn't make economic sense for someone like us to kind of like do it at this stage. Then there's this angle of not all OEMs or car manufacturers want their particular models to be run as a commercial taxi.
Yeah.
So that angle is also there. So it's not like if I want, I can suddenly pick any car and
I think for
design
BYD it was
that
the
as
lowest
like
hanging fruit, right?
Sorry?
For BYD it was the lowest hanging fruit as far as I can tell in terms of the cabs. In India I still feel the belief is अगर cab वाला चला रहा है मतलब गाड़ी is...
I mean, BYD has been doing this for a long time. So like this model that they launched is a fleet car or designed for fleets in other parts of the world.
Oh, really?
BYD has been doing that for like, more than a decade now.
Oh.
So it wasn't like it was a low hanging fruit from an Indian market perspective. This was a tried and tested model that they have run for fleets across countries before launching it in India.
Tell me about what happened just 2-3 days ago when I was here with the entire Delhi airport scenario going haywire. How did you guys navigate that? I know it's relevant now, but in the next, maybe when the podcast comes out, it might become a distant memory. So what happened and how did you guys tackle it?
No, it took us some time to actually know what's happening because, the news came out a little later, but then we were already experiencing chaos and delays, and then we realized or found out that there was a technical glitch in the ATC in the Delhi airport, and that caused flight schedules to go haywire and for airlines to kind of shift towards manually planning a bunch of things that they were otherwise was done from automatically via the tech, and this glitch prevented that, and it had an impact for like, let's say, X hours, but then the ripple effects from those 3, 4, 5, 6 hours when it was down kind of continued for a long time because schedules went for a toss, arrivals got delayed, departures got delayed. In turn, that had ripple effects on us as a business because people who were supposed to leave at 3 were now saying we'll leave at 3:30. At 3:30, they were saying we'll now leave at 4. People who were supposed to land at 4 were either landing at 6 or 8, and there was just flight tracking APIs at some point started giving inaccurate information because there was just so uncertainty, so they didn't have that clarity. So a lot of the systems that we relied on failed. A lot of schedules that ideally or normally are followed, they went for a toss, and as a result, we experienced operational issues. So we also had to we couldn't serve as many customers as we would have liked or would have on a given day. We had to cancel existing bookings because we now just couldn't accommodate them because someone else was delayed 3 hours, or we had a limited fleet that we could do all these things with. And even there are certain judgment calls you take, right? Like if let's say I have 4-5 bookings that to choose from to cancel, you kind of try and take a judgment call. Okay, this is a single lady passenger, or these are aged parents who are traveling, or this is a person traveling with an infant. So you kind of try your best to provide a car to them and apologize to someone else, because anyways so much chaos has been happening. But then you try and be as mindful about who is at the other end and try to do it right by them.
So pretty much the whole team had to get on.
Of course, I mean this happens every day. It's just that yesterday or the day before when this happened, this was like at a much unprecedented scale.
Interesting. How have you organized the incentives for the drivers?
So drivers have a base pay, and their incentives are based only on the feedbacks that they receive.
Tell me more.
So about 25% of their
what do they
base.
Get paid? What's the base pay? Is it same across all drivers?
There are 2 tiers of drivers. So drivers who've basically, the base pay is 21, and then well performing, people who've had a long track record of performing well, who've earned our trust, their base pay is slightly higher. And the incentives are up to $5,000 per driver, and that is based only on the feedbacks they receive. And we as a company, we make it very accessible and easy for anyone to leave us a feedback. You can email us, we send you a feedback form after your trip. We ask you to give feedback along with the invoice when we send it to you. And the belief for the hypothesis there is that if you had a great ride and everything's gone well, you may not let me know.
Yeah.
But if you've had something that's gone wrong, right, or not as expected, or not as what we've promised, then you're very likely to come and let us know that, right? Like for example, we say very proudly that drivers don't talk on the phone. Now, if your driver has been talking on the phone for 20 minutes, not only is that annoying, that this is not what something should have happened, and you leave that feedback then, which then allows us to go back to the driver and be like, this has happened. Don't make this mistake next time, but for this time, because you've made this mistake, your incentives are now lesser.
What about smaller things like opening the door for the customer?
Yeah, all of that. So all of that is part of feedback. See, I can't monitor that, right? Because only someone who is in that environment at that moment can kind of say whether or not this has happened. So we can't really monitor that, which is why we rely heavily on feedbacks.
Interesting. Any other incentives in a way in which it helps them align with what you're trying to deliver?
No, I would say this is the main incentive.
What about tipping? How do they? Is there an opportunity for them?
It's really like it's free for all. If you want to tip. There is no expectation. Drivers shouldn't be asking you for tips. So it's really like up to you as a guest whether or not you want to tip, but there is no expectation.
Interesting. Tell me about the word of mouth marketing. I know that you guys have really good, I don't know how to say it, but LinkedIn sense.
Okay.
Yeah. In the terms that there's a very innate virality in the posts, and there's a relatability to the posts.
Okay.
Right. How has that been crafted? Has that been very intentional? Has it been mostly user generated only? How have you able to navigate? I know you don't have zero marketing budget. That's not the point.
Of course.
But how do how do you look at the perception of Shoffr on LinkedIn? How do you manage that?
I don't manage it. I look at it very proudly that we managed to achieve something like this, uh, surely through organically and through the love that users have or guests have for us. We've not asked one person to kind of post anything about us. They've all done it because they felt they wanted to, and they did. As far as the things that we talk about, we are very clear that there's like, as much as we would like to have like a great social media presence, I don't believe in putting things out there for the heck of it, wishing happy Independence Day or Republic Day or any of that kind of like a social calendar sort of a thing that we follow. We put out things when we have a story to say, and hopefully that is what makes us genuine, and that shows probably in our posts or the stories that we put across. But that has been the conscious decision, that we are not going to put things out there for the sake of putting things out there. We want obviously to have a large following of all sorts, but we want that to be genuine. So we will only put out things there when we have a story to tell.
Okay, let's get to the rapid fire questions.
All right.
A piece of content that you recently watched, consumed, read that you'd recommend to the audience. Could be a book, movie, podcast, series, mini series, WhatsApp message, any piece of content. This is the longest you've thought of a response.
There's nothing rapid about this. I don't have anything recent that I would recommend.
Who's the smartest person you know?
Smartest person I know is a school friend of mine. I consider him as pretty smart.
Okay. A line or two more about them?
I mean, he's just one of those guys who's he's worked hard, but then he's inherently also very, very smart. So, and that just shows in just how he analyzes things and talks about things.
And because you come from the business world, what's the best business that you know?
Apple.
Why?
Because they are not only great at what they do, but they've also kind of over the years built that name for themselves, and today they are at a stage where they are not only, obviously they are doing phenomenally as a business in terms of profits and revenues and all that, but they have that brand. Like, it's one of those, I was reading just 3-4 days back someone's post. Apple's probably like one of the only large companies that follows 0 people on any social media. They just have a presence and that's it. They don't post anything. They don't talk about anything.
It's pretty much user-generated content.
They're just there, and that has taken years to build, and they just have that kind of a following. So Apple is successful from not only like a pure business perspective in terms of generating profits and all of that, but I respect their thinking, the design craft that they have, the stances that they have taken at different points in time. Of course, the company itself has undergone transformation again and again in their 40-50 year journey, but I think I admire that company a lot.
What's the cutest review Shoffr has gotten
in
the
last 3 years? Review?
Yeah.
We've got some cute reviews. We've had people thanking us for making them feel safe. I think I remember tweeting about this when I used to be doing CX, and I think one of these...
What's CX?
Customer support, right? And so this lady had reached out saying that, hey, can I talk to someone? I just want to share feedback. I thought it would be bad. So I said, okay, you've got me. I'm Vikas, I'm the founder. And then she just went on saying, so glad you started this. I feel safe. I take a lot of late night flights and early morning flights, and I'm glad to have a service like this. So that felt really nice, and this was earlier days. We've had, so I think that was one. We've had quite a few such reviews, and they all feel nice. I think one cute review, I don't think this was public, but then one of our frequent guests had a kid, and the kid's first ever ride was in a Shoffr from the hospital to home.
Nice.
So that felt really nice. That was the first time we probably added a user to the market. Because otherwise, all our users, I can't really say, right? Like how a lot of fintech companies claim that, oh, I brought these many people to the stock markets because they opened their first Demat account with them. I can't say that. All of my users have taken a taxi before. Barring that one tiny baby, who I'm very, very happy that Shoffr was their first ride.
Cute stuff. I think, what's the last piece of gadget gizmo that you've bought under 10,000 rupees that you'd recommend?
Gadget and gizmo that I bought.
Or widget or app subscription under 10,000 that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I'm not that cool, man. I don't buy all these things. Okay. I don't have subscription to any of the apps. So no, again, I don't have. Oh wait, I got an air fryer recently, but I don't know yet if I would recommend it.
Okay.
Sorry, very boring.
Oh God. A 1 week challenge to the audience. For this, you can pan to the iPhone and tell them 7-day challenge that they can go ahead and try with a hashtag. They'll tag us on social media.
7-day challenge.
Yeah.
I guess, over the next 7 days, any rides that you take, speak to the drivers, understand the challenges they face, how their lives are, and let us know about that. And maybe you can do the hashtag get to know your driver or something.
Yeah.
Get to know your
Now
chauffeur.
We're talking. Yeah. Get to know your chauffeur. I like that.
But yeah, because at the end of the day, all of this has ended up becoming fairly transactional. Yeah. I book a ride, I want an auto, I'm going from point A to point B and done. Just speak. Everyone has their own stories, and it's not like an easy job driving, whether it's a car or an auto or a bike for like 12-14 hours day in, day out. It's not an easy job.
Yeah. Hashtag know your chauffeur. For the next 7 days, connect with whoever is taking you around town and let us know how it goes. Coming to the final question, Vikas. What's the impact you seek to make with Shoffr?
That I seem to make.
That you want to make with Shoffr?
I'll tell you the impact that, I didn't think I would be making when I started it, which is providing livelihoods to so many people. And the first time I felt that was the first time I kind of was delayed in paying out salaries to drivers, because I was just busy with so many things and I only had to approve and upload it and approve it and all of that. And that's when I realized that, these 10 people ka ghar chalta hai because of this. That number's obviously now grown to like 350 plus drivers and probably 50 people across operations and corporate. But I feel very happy and proud about that impact, because that is not something that I thought would happen at this scale. Yeah. And, obviously, hopefully we'll continue to grow and that scale will only increase. But that was something that after starting, while experiencing and running the business, I realized that, damn, this is happening. And that felt really good.
On that note, go and make some Galata.